Harry, do you have, based on our previous run-throughs of this case, have any observations from board members about the issues this case brings up?
I do, Nicole. Thanks for that opportunity. What strikes me as unique in this case is the relationship between the board and the superintendent. As we've mentioned a number of times, we see the role of the board as setting the broad direction for the district and the supervisory union, and that the superintendent is the key person in the administration of that system to deliver on those expectations. Of course, the superintendent is typically a very experienced career educator who not only is the instructional symbolic leader in the school system, but also in many respects serves as the mentor, teacher, and guide for the board. And so it can be a particularly challenging dynamic for board members to bring up concerns with the superintendent's performance. The conclusions we've come to, and I think Steve will say more about this, is to reiterate how important it is to be clear about those expectations, to have ongoing open communication, and really to conduct a structured and formal evaluation on a regular and certainly annual basis so that issues don't blossom into broad and unwieldy concerns but are dealt with immediately. But again, I think that the delicate place, and it's probably particularly for new board members, is to remember, as the board, you set the direction, you set the expectations for the performance of the school system, and in particular the performance of the superintendent, and that you're really obligated in that mutual accountability to set those expectations and to hold the superintendent to fulfilling them. So I think that's the delicate balance that I hear board members wrestling with.
Thanks, Harry. Steve, do you have any thoughts on a good way to approach this problem?
Well, I do, and it's related to the question that was asked in the chat box earlier. I always love case studies because they only give you just a little smidgen of the real situation, and you can imagine the rest of the facts however you want to. If we'd given you more details, we would have let you have the honor of taking a poll expressing your opinion about what should be done, but we decided not to do that. So a couple thoughts. First of all, we've all got to acknowledge that this is a tough environment that we're in terms of it's an unusual environment. I don't know too many organizations that have the complexity that education has. So in this scenario, you've got 8 boards, and this person is the CEO for those 8 boards and the SU. And so by definition, it's complicated and it's difficult, and we need to be somewhat patient with each other as a result of that. Not relaxed in terms of accepting less than high levels of performance, but in terms of how communications get handled, how process gets handled. We just have to be cognizant of the difficulties. So first thing I'd say is that every concern that may occur to one of us as a board member doesn't necessarily have to be shared. There's things that that irritate all of us, some of which should be shared and some of which don't. So that's just a reminder to everybody. The second is, and this answers the question that was asked earlier, if something is bothering you as an individual, not as a board, but as an individual, so you were in a meeting with the superintendent and a parent and some other board members or whatever, and you didn't like the way the superintendent spoke to the parent, for example, my thought about that kind of thing is that if the situation is appropriate to it, it is absolutely appropriate for you as an individual to share your perspective on what took place with the superintendent. So to say to a superintendent in private, I was in that meeting the other day, and the way you dealt with that parent really made me uncomfortable. And the reason why, it opens up a conversation. The superintendent can either accept or reject your perspective. But I think those kinds of communications both help superintendents adjust style, and it builds a basis, a good foundation for a strong relationship on an ongoing basis. Sometimes board members feel so nervous about gee, am I supposed to say anything, or am I not supposed to say anything? Things that could be said very early in a relationship don't get said, and then over time they build up and then they become a big deal. So my own thought is that as long as you're not speaking for the board, and as long as you're not expecting the superintendent's going to react as though you're his person or her personal boss, I think that's great. Obviously, if it's a more serious issue that involves just your district, it is something that your district board should be addressing with the superintendent. And clearly, if it's about overriding performance concerns, or if it's getting into a serious performance kind of an issue, that really has to be done in the context of the supervisory union board.